So what is so interesting about art itself? A lot of art comes from a lot of dark experiences of life, and without darkness in life, there would be no art of any kind. So there's no surprise to anyone that a lot of relatable songs that we relate to in any kind of genre of music, pop or metal, etc. A lot of artists go through a lot of hell and turn those really bad life experiences into stories, relatable stories. And depending the right kind of genre you're trying to go with, because sometimes you have to switch the music style and the genre you're normally associated with your friends with. Sometimes you have to just change everything to deliver the right correct story with the music you're trying to represent to this audience of yours, right? Not everything works the same style. So sometimes artists have to change things around in order to tell the correct story the way it's supposed to be told from a different point of view with different kinds of styles. So what's so interesting about being an artist? You go through all these changes in life, these really bad experiences, and you turn that into inspiration, you turn that into knowledge, and you are able to tell a story so well, people can either create a different story in their own image from your music and your one specific song that really means a lot to people. What's so interesting about music, not everyone connects and relates to it the exact same way. When we listen to music, we create our own reality, our own fictional universe of what we think that song means and what it could mean to us. What the actual artist went through and what we relate to the song from our experiences, or we're changing the vibe of the genre in our head, because when you listen to a song, you create your own different reality of what you think the song means and what the actual lesson is about. And no one really gets the same message. And then everyone comes together, all the fans, and try to understand a certain song. And that they have different experiences talking about what they think it means and what they actually think the song legit does mean. Like, I figured it out. But one person is going to say, no, it's about this specific storyline, this specific pain, this specific kind of awareness, right? And not everyone gets the same kind of answer. But the idea of being an artist sometimes is to allow your audience to tell the story for you. Like a director wants to be told from the fans what they think about their film. What does it mean to you? What does my characters mean to you? What does my story mean to you? They obviously created the story itself, but from a fan's point of view, the director sometimes also wants to know from the fans, what does this really mean to you from your perspective, from your connections of what you're getting out of my work? Like, what does it mean to you? Then they'll look at it from a different lens to understand what they actually created, because when you hear more voices about your work and other opinions, the actual artist itself would know more about how powerful this specific style is, of the story they created, film or song, because everyone has different perspectives, different realities of what they think this specific art is, right? And without darkness, a lot of art would not exist. And in my personal opinion, I feel like life needs to have a balance between darkness and light, good and evil. The iconic thing that's always in stories and everything. We already know this, but the idea if the world was always as beautiful and as perfect as we wish it would be, even it's from like how we wish it would be from our hearts or from a religious standpoint, if the world was actually created this nice, kind, peaceful kind of way people wish the world would be, imagine so much art that would never existed because the world was always positive and so kind. And we want a positive and kind world. All of us do. But at the same time, a lot of shows that we love, songs that we love, movies, without darkness, without pain, without any kind of depression, a lot of guilt, a lot of art would have never been there to reach people. But the thing is, if the world was always perfect and always good, then nobody would even complain. No one would even think about a different style, a different perspective to have like happy art and dark art, you know? The world is created between two balances, obviously with good and evil. So imagine if we actually lived in the world that people want to live in, which is this peaceful world, if everything was good, if everything was peaceful every single day, would you even care to even try to understand what it'd be like if something was created differently? Because the ideal world would be if everything was created good and positive. You can't even think of imagination perspective. What would happen if art went this direction, or if the world was like this? Then the ideal world would be, what if the world was in chaos? That would be a fictional world, because the world that we would have lived in, if the world was how people want it to be, there'll be no idea if the world would ever go in some kind of darkness, because it never even happened. Sorry if I'm confusing you, but in this world that we live in, we have both light and shadow, both kind people and evil people. So many things exist because art is how it is, because how the world is, right? So what I'm getting at is that we like a lot of dark stuff because we connect with it. So imagine if nothing existed, any kind of darkness never existed. No dark songs, no dark mature movies, no mature deep topics, none of it. If the world was just how it was supposed to be intended, that people want it to be, every single day, a loving and positive world. So we would only get loving and positive art. We'll never see a different perspective of art because you need darkness to have a different perspective, right? So if it never existed, imagine just one form of art every single time, every single day of your life. Anytime you've ever looked for any kind of genre of different kind of art, like where would you see a different perspective or imagination of a different perspective of art if darkness was never a concept, if it never existed, if war never happened, you know? Like a lot of families are how they are today because conflict existed in the past. Families traveled and moved. They were forced to move. They were forced to move from their country. And then they remarried and found other people, you know, being their new lovers. And people today only exist because conflict existed. So if you went back in time to change things in order to prevent construction and war and conflict, a lot of people today would never existed because they never met each other because things were peaceful. People met and generations of families happened today because we lived in dark times, because those dark times existed. So in general, the idea of thought is to go back in time to fix everything, to make everything positive and good if wars never existed, you would be defeating and taking away a lot of people that would not be existing today, and how people were able to find happiness through dark times would never existed because everyone was happily having a good life if someone went in time and erased those dark times. So if you're trying to piece together what I'm trying to say here, I'm basically saying that life would be completely different if it was always perfect, if it was always this ideal, happy, sunshine world that people wish that we lived in. And a lot of people love dark stories. A lot of people like to be tested. A lot of people like to see a different perspective of someone's point of view because darkness existed. So if the balance was never between dark and light, and we only had one positive side forever of any kind of art, of any kind of style, of trying to like train your mind to think like there's both good and evil out there, but if it was only accepted by one perspective, which is always good, then you can't even think of something to really exist, to really push your brain, your imagination, your creativity, if everything was always light, because the world would always been positive since like a long time ago. So it's like we want an ideal world of everything to be peaceful and kind, but at the same time, we would be erasing so much art that we love today if shit like that from the past and all the stuff that we go through as people and what artists have gone through, a lot of artists would never create their personal mature songs. A lot of mature and deep ideology movies would never existed if people didn't have an experience of going through some kind of pain. So it's really hard to decide what world do we really want to live in. It's like we want to live in a peaceful world, but that would also take away mature and dark art that challenges your brain and your mind and your perspectives and your beliefs because things like that exist. So if you erased it, just imagine if we only had just one simple way of living life, a one style of living life, and create one style of art. It's really interesting if you think about that, but let me know.